condition of man, which is a condition of war of everyone against everyone. No government, no established rule, no protection, rights and liberty. But today we are living in 21st century and in a postmodern society and so far in a largest democratic country in the world. Unfortunately, again we have started living everyday life in a state of constant fear, solitude and certainly also it seems hurts due to this pandemic. As the second wave of pandemic has devastated our everyday life and livelihood and consequently it has unmasked the inefficient mechanism of governance and abject health infrastructure of our country. So now the real challenge is responsibility and accountability. Who is responsible? The state, the individual, the society in large, the government, the list goes on. So it's a time to rethink the role of state during this pandemic. What could be the possible solutions, negotiation and resolution? With this, I, Mrs. Sarita Bagh, Assistant Professor and Head Department of Political Science, on behalf of PG Department of Political Science, Kalahandi University, I extend my warm welcome to our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kalahandi University, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy Sir, esteemed Registrar of Kalahandi University, Professor Padma Luchan Bhui Sir, persons, invited guest of today's webinar, Professor Narendra Kumar Sir, Professor Sartik Bagh Sir, distinguished faculties, my colleagues, all participants, and my fellow students. It's a great opportunity and privilege to introduce the most eminent personality who those are present here today amongst us. First of all, I would like to introduce our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Kalahandi University, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy, who is the chief patron of this webinar. Professor Satpathy is not only a well-renowned academician, an eminent scholar in the commerce, former dean of School of Commerce and Management, Ravenshaw University, but also an original thinker, a writer, a poet, an excellent orator, a lyricist, a singer, a histrionic performer in the stage since 1971, in radio since 1978, in television since 1981, having keen interest in various socio-cultural, educational, environmental, spiritual programs. With more than 36 years of research and teaching experience, SAR has served in diverse prestigious educational institution and University of Odisha. Professor Satpathy's immense dedication to the field and his work being so influential has fetched him numerous prestigious honors and awards. To name a few, Golden Mean Award for Excellence in Leadership in Education by Dinergic Business Solution in 2021, Mahanadi Sanskritik Seva Samman in 2020, Indo Global Education Excellence in 2020 at Bangkok, Thailand, Hind Ratan Award by NRI Welfare Society and Government of India for contribution to education, society and culture in 2015. Pratibha for organizational efficiency in the workshop on digital media sponsored by NCSTC Departments of Science and Technology, New Delhi and many more. Professor Satpathy, a teacher by choice, a multidimensional practitioner with objective of creating a better society through students ignited with continuous learning attitude. He is also well known for copyright on Fourth Monkey, Think No Evil, after Gandhi's Three Monkey concept. Sir, it's our utmost honor and pleasure to have you on DICE. Thank you, sir. Once again, I welcome you to this webinar. Also, I take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed registrar and patron of this webinar, Sri Padma Luchan Bhui Sir, who is a well-renowned eminent scholar in Sanskrit, an excellent orator, a person who believes in concept of simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Apart from being a good academician, he is also a good leader, a good human being. Thank you, sir. It's a great honor and pleasure to have you today with us. It's my utmost honor, immense pleasure and proud moment to introduce my mentor, my guide, my supervisor, Professor Narendra Kumar, our resource person for today's webinar, who is presently an esteemed faculty and professor at Center for Political Studies, School of Social Science, JNU, New Delhi. A world-renowned academician, a political scientist, influential critic, great intellectual and a dynamic leader, Professor Kumar has completed his all academic career, Master of Arts, MPhil, PhD from CPS, JNU, New Delhi, which is one of the premier institutions in India. Prior to this, with 15 years of research and teaching experience, Professor Kumar has served at diverse central higher educational institutions across the country. To name a few are University of Delhi, Jamia Millia Islamia New Delhi, Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar University Lucknow and JNU New Delhi. Professor Kumar nurtured his keen interest in various concepts like political institutions, public policy and political process with special reference to marginalized groups. Sir's contribution to the proliferation of the field of political science have been widely acknowledged to his intriguing book chapters, which is around 10 books authored by himself, 9 chapters in edited books, 7 book reviews, various articles in leading newspapers, having around 37 both national and international presentations in various workshops, symposium, conference, and seminar. Added to this, Sar has also contributed around 12 papers in most reputed journals such as Reservation Policy and Backward Classes, Extent and Determinants of Support in EPW, Continuance of Manual Scavenging, Intergroup Inequality of Policy Paralysis in Journal of Social Inclusion Studies, Politicization of Caste and Impulsion of Politics, BSP in Contemporary India, in Contemporary Voice of Dalit, Representation, Hegemony and Governance, Alternative Constitution in Journal of History and Society, South Asia, and many more. His phenomenal contribution in the field of political science are also evident in the form of numerous books that Sar has authored and co-authored, published by prestigious literature publication, Oxford University Press, Macmillan, Springer, Nature, and Sage. Professor Kumar's immense dedication to the field and his work being so influential and thought-provoking fetched him numerous prestigious honor and award. To mention a few are Professor Kumar is the recipient of prestigious award Indo-French Social Scientist Fellowship in the year 2011. Apart from this, being the distinguished personality and a competent administrator, also Sar has successfully served for various committees. To name a few are member of Fox Fellowship Selection Committee, JNU New Delhi, former coordinator, Head Department of Political Science, BBAU Lucknow, Director of Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, BBAU Lucknow, member of Research Advisory Committee, Apex Body of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India in 2011, Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship Selection Committee, UGC, member of Debating Society, Motilal Nehru College, New Delhi. Also, Professor Kumar has served as visiting faculty to Tripura University, Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, visiting fellow to JNU, Center for Law and Governance. Successfully, he has completed 4 research projects sponsored by UGC, ICSSR, Indo-European sponsored project with international collaboration UK, France, and India. Around 12 MPhil and 12 PhD scholars is working under his guidance. Sir, it's very difficult to summarize even briefly your lifelong achievements. Sir, it's a great honor and we are fortunate enough to have you today with us. Thank you, sir. Once again, I welcome you to this webinar. Next, I'm extremely delighted and it's a proud moment for me to introduce today's another resource person, Professor Sarthik Bagh, who is alumni of this institution, Government College Autonomous Bhawanipatna, and student of our Honorable Vice Chancellor. Sir is presently an esteemed faculty and professor at Department of Political Science, Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow. Prior to this, over 20 years of research and teaching experience, Sir has taught at Government College, UT Chandigarh. Professor Bagh has obtained his higher education from Center for Political Studies, JNU, New Delhi. His research interests include educational and developmental issues related to marginalized groups and backward regions in India. Professor Bagh nurtured his keen interest in political theory, particularly the concept of social justice, multiculturalism, social democracy, and welfare state and neoliberalism. Sar has published a book on decentralized education and community participation in 2005. Also, Professor Bagh has published several papers in peer-reviewed journals such as Man and Development, Indian Journal of Political Economy, Indian Journal of Politics, South Asian Journal of Socio-Political Studies, Indian Journal of Dalits and Tribal Studies. He has also contributed chapters in many edited books, including MA Political Science, IGNOU material on political theory. Professor Bagh has successfully completed joint project on educational status of scheduled castes in Uttar Pradesh, achievements and challenges sponsored by ICSSR New Delhi, and an international project on real estate sector and rural migration study of Lucknow in collaboration with Stockholm University, Sweden, being a core team member. He has been a member of several professional organizations such as Comparative Education Society of India, Association for Political Theory since 2015, American Political Science Association since 2005, International Political Science Association since 2009, Indian Council of Philosophical Research since 2010. Also, Sar has served as member at various national and university level committee. To mention a few are member of National Seminar Grant Commission, ICSSR New Delhi, reviewer of Impress, ICSSR New Delhi, member of BPGS Department of Political Science, IGNOU New Delhi, member of BPGS Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, member of DR DRC Department of Political Science, Dayalbagh Education Institution, Agra. Member of DRC Department of Political Science, Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapith, Varanasi. Sir was also former head of Department of Political Science, Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow. Sir is present director of Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, BBAU, and also anti-discrimination officer of the university. Around 9 PhD scholars are working under his guidance. Sir, it's a great honor and we are fortunate to have you today with us. Thank you, sir. Once again, I welcome you to this webinar. I take this opportunity to introduce none other than Sri Maheshwar Durya sir, Assistant Professor in Political Science, Kalahandi University, who is a dynamic leader, student-friendly teacher, a good academician, who has completed his career from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Welcome you, sir. Also, I would like to introduce our organizing member, Sri Sarveshwar Uthan Singh sir, lecturer in Political Science, who is also a good academician, a student-friendly teacher. Welcome you, sir. Thank you. May I now request Sri Durya sir to take over from here? It's over to you, sir. Thank you. Durya sir?
Thank you, madam.
Okay, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sarita madam, for your precise and structured introduction of dignitaries. May I now request our patron, Professor Padmalochan Bhoi sir, Registrar of Kalahandi University, to address the webinar. It is over to Bhoi sir.
Thank you, Durya Babu. Revert Professor Sanjay Satpathy, Vice Chancellor, Kalahandi University. Esteemed Resource Person, Professor Narendra Kumar. Esteemed Resource Person, Sartik Bag. Convener, Sarita Madam. Organizing Secretary, Uthan Singh sir, and Durya sir, and all the participants. Department of Political Science today organizing a national level seminar. Topic is rethink the role of state during the pandemic. The caption is something odd to me. Have we think before the pandemic? Yes, we have. But we never talk about, never discuss about in a manner that the state, the government. I was a student of political science 40 years back. Political science was optional in my IA career. State have 4 pillars. And one of the most important pillar is your people, population. Have we thought ever? Government is thinking about the pandemic. It's okay that they are doing politics. Okay. But what we are doing with the people of India? What we are doing? That's why it is my earnest request all the population, the people, to play our vital role during the pandemic. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, our patron, Professor Padmalochan Bhoi sir. Thank you for your inspiring words and valuable points relating to this topic. Now I consider it a great honor to invite Professor Narendra Kumar sir, our distinguished research person, an eminent educationist and one of the leading political scientists of JNU, New Delhi, to share his ideas on this topic. It is over to you, Professor Narendra Kumar sir.
Thank you, Maheshwar Duria, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy, the Registrar, Sri Padam Lochan Bhuye, the organizers, main organizers, my student Sarita Bagh. I am so happy to see that she is so active and contributing to the academic life of the university. The other dignitaries, my friend and colleague, Professor Sartik Bagh, colleagues who have joined for this webinar, the participants and the students. It's my pleasure to be here with you for this webinar. While looking at the topic, when I thought of the kind of topic that you have conceptualized for today's seminar, then I was trying to think that how this topic could be understood. And this is rethinking the role of state during pandemic COVID-19. When we are saying that rethinking, it means that we are trying to understand the meaning of this topic by rethinking the role of the state. And what rethinking means, that there is already some thinking or some idea about which we need to rethink, as the present thinking or the idea needs to be revisited. As per now, the state is not in a position to understand or to, let's say, contribute to the lives of the people. And that's why we are thinking that there is a need to rethink the role of the state has been performing its role in different forms. But when we are talking about the rethinking of the state during pandemic, that means the state has not been able to perform its function satisfactorily. And that is why we are trying to understand that where the state has gone wrong, why we have the pandemic so devastating in our country in particular, in different parts of the world in general. When we look at the role of the state, then we see that the role of the state has been its designated or assigned role. That role might differ in different kinds of contexts. That is, the state might be authoritarian state, the state might be democratic state, the state might be a socialist state. And the kind of state we are, or the state is, that would be determining that how the state would be responding to a particular kind of phenomenon. And state has always been responding to the different kinds of phenomena, but the role of the state is understood differently when it comes to the emergencies. And that's why the states have been considered both potentially autonomous and being influenced and limited by socio-economic relations on its structures and activities. That is, that sometimes we say that the state is autonomous. And when we look at the state in terms of autonomy or in terms of, let's say, capacities, then we also know as students of political science that there is a weak state and there is also a strong state. And we know the difference, that which are the weak states and which are the strong states. Weak states are obviously those which get influenced by the circumstances. And the strong states are those where the states can determine, irrespective of the influence that might be there on it, whether it could be socio-economic or otherwise. I believe that the organizers of the webinar are trying to understand, identify and conceptualize and explain variations in time and space of corona pandemic, conditions favoring or impeding state autonomy, and the determinants and effectiveness of state interventions. Here the need is to understand the impact of state policies and structures. That means that state has been existing, and as the state has been in existence, so it would certainly be responding through its policies. But whether those policies are sufficient enough in the times of emergency, that is a different matter. So state, that means, has two major components. That is, one is state capacity, where it is able to carry out the basic tasks of providing security and reconciling freedom and equality to its citizens. Then state has the resources, organization, legitimacy, and leadership to implement its decisions. This is the state capacity. And what is the state autonomy? State autonomy is the ability of the state to act without constraints from domestic or international factors. State needs some autonomy to enact policies and not merely be a tool for special interests. And also, a state with total autonomy may contravene the democratic rights of the citizens. That means state as an autonomous body has both the positive, could acquire, let's say this way, could acquire both a positive as well as a negative role. We, that is India, being a democratic state in the formal sense of the term, also have to rethink the role of state, as pandemic is an unusual, uncommon, unprecedented problem about which there has not been demarcated or marked and defined role for the state. Though one can argue in favor of emergency powers of the state. We know that the Indian Constitution gives the emergency powers in terms of national emergency, state emergency, and the financial emergency. But these emergencies probably are not in a position to define the kind of role the state is supposed to play in the contemporary times, that is during the pandemic. However, these are not seen to be sufficiently equipped. Why these are not seen to be sufficiently equipped? Because these are the emergencies which have been defined, that these are the kinds of characteristics or these are the kind of circumstances in which these emergency powers will be used. But what kind of power will be used by the state during the pandemic? Probably the constitution makers did not anticipate that the state should also have the power during the pandemic. Now, a rethinking of the state amid crisis. See, we are trying to understand the state in terms of crisis and why there is a need for rethinking. Actually, the state need to be understood with those representing the state. State cannot be understood in vacuum. As I told you that there are different kinds of state: authoritarian state, democratic state, communist or socialist state. But apart from that, actually, those who are representing the state, they also determine that how the state would be responding to different kinds of issues which emerge during different kinds of times. And in this context, in fact, I am reminded of the statement of our uh, constitution maker, chief architect of the constitution, that is Dr. Ambedkar. And he tried to argue that whether we have a bad constitution or a good constitution, actually, it finally depends on those who are holding the power, who are implementing the constitution. They will make the constitution bad or good. And that's why he said that a good constitution may prove to be a bad constitution if those who are at the helm of the affairs are a bad lot. Whereas a bad constitution might prove to be a good constitution if those are who are at the helm of the affairs, they are the good lot. That means that similarly, the state can also be understood in terms of those who are representing the state. That is the state actors. And there can be state institutions as well, but state institutions all are also managed by the personalities, the state actors. And we know very well that during different times, different kinds of personalities, when they hold the power, they behave differently within the same constitution, within the same parliamentary system of government, within, let's say, same political system. And we know that the state actors like the prime ministers, chief ministers have different personal capacities, charismas to handle unprecedented events or emergencies. We can think of, like, in the history, there have been various instances wherein people like Indira Gandhi used emergency powers, which is known as emergency in the popular political sense, which was in 1975. So, and apart from that, in different states, people, that is the chief ministers of the states, have been trying to become the let's say torch bearers for some of the issues which came before them. Like, I would certainly like to say that chief ministers like Naveen Patnaik handling the natural calamities, especially in the coastal during the coastal storms, Uddhav Thackeray and Pinarayi Vijayan controlling the pandemic cases in their states to a greater extent. Before that, people like Lalu Prasad Yadav, Mulayam Singh Yadav, these people controlling the communal rights. And similarly, there have been different kinds of prime ministers also in the same line. Those who have been very, very active, and those who have told that, yes, there is a state that exists. And in different forms, actually, what happens that though the situations are same, but different people or different personalities who are at the helm of the affairs, they behave differently. We can look at that how pandemic has to be understood in the process of liberalization and globalization and the role of the state. Because if we look at, let's say, from 1992 to 2014, which is known as the period of liberalization, here the dominant understanding in India was that there is a recession of state. The state is receding. The state is backing out. This was the period 1992-2014, wherein it was considered that the globalization process actually has taken over, and the institutions of, let's say, parliamentary institutions, even judiciary and other institutions, they have had a major impact of this process. And it was thought that it will not be having sufficient role for itself. But when we come to 2014, with the same situation wherein the globalization process is continuing, wherein the liberalization process is going on, even there the Narendra Modi comes into power, and he makes us to understand that no, the state is there. State has not evaporated. State still exists, and it is very much in the handling of the situations. And that is where the 2014 is considered to be, I would argue, that could be considered wherein that the state became a very, very strong state. And before that, during, let's say, Manmohan Singh's period, and before that even, there was a kind of, in some sense, it was a kind of weak state where the globalization process was taking place, and the institutions were actually, and the personalities were also influenced by this. But when we look at, let's say, the Narendra Modi government during this period, then what we find is that there have been some of the moments wherein the people got to know that the state has a very, very, let's say, limited role. It could be in terms of, though when we look at the demonetization process, there the personality became important and the state institutions were sidelined. Similarly, the sidelining of the constitutional and non-constitutional institutions has been taking place. Another strong state was the reflection wherein the first lockdown was introduced just one night, with same night actually, during the pandemic. That means that the personalities who are holding the power, they can make the state to work as per its own whims and fancies, and as per their understanding, or as per their, let's say, working. One can argue that this way the state is becoming stronger, and another way the state is becoming weaker, though the circumstances are almost same, but the personalities are different. And not only actually the state is influenced by the personality, but also the ideology. Ideology also influences the state capacity, or the state autonomy does not remain there when the ideology influences the state. So state capacity, state autonomy is inflicted upon by the ideology, which can be understood in our times, that how some of the organizations are becoming very, very influential when it comes to the capacity of the state, influencing the state, in fact. And on the one hand, the let's say formal or traditional structures of interest, which are known as pressure groups, they are not holding power, they are getting sidelined, but there are some organizations which are becoming very, very influential in whole of this process. So what is the, let's say, role of the state? Why we need to rethink the role of the state during the pandemic? Why this whole idea has come that we need to rethink about the role of the state? The state might be doing its function, but actually the lack of basic facilities, even of the primary health centers at the village level, the advanced equipment of health, lack of these, black marketing of essential medicines, as well as, you know very well, the kind of black marketing of the oxygen also went on. The corporates controlling the health infrastructure. Actually, this whole process of rethinking the role of the state has basically come. Why? Because earlier the state was considered that it will be providing the health facilities to its citizens. But now the corporates are controlling the health infrastructure. And when the health infrastructure is being controlled by the corporate houses, then there is certainly the possibility that there will be less possibility for the citizens to get facilities, and that's where the role of the state becomes very significant. And you can understand it in terms of vaccine, and the way vaccine has been let's say administered. The vaccine has been prepared in this in our country. That whole process has also made us to think that there is a need for rethinking the role of the state. Why? Because actually now there is a dilemma among some of the some citizens, or let's say majority of the citizens, that whether one should be going for the vaccine or not, because there are whole different kinds of complex kind of issues, the complex kind of let's say opinions which are coming up, which we see in our day-to-day life, that the where the vaccine and also the whole infrastructure, the health infrastructure, has proved to be significantly insignificant for the citizens of the country. And that's why there has been uh, uh, an argument that we need to rethink about the state. And that's why the fundamentals of human needs cannot be left to the market, because the market's basic philosophy and purpose is the profit. And not only that, actually, the when the media is also being controlled by the market, then the opinion is also constructed accordingly, and that's why we don't get the real picture, or the let's say ground reality which is emerging during the pandemic. And that's why I would argue that there is a need, and very strong need, that we need to rethink the role of the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Narendra Kumar sir, for your interesting and informative deliberations. I really appreciate the way you have focused on some core issues like why state needs to have a different kind of role during pandemic, how state is understood in terms of capacity and state autonomy, and the kind of factors which influence them. You also focused on why do we need to rethink about the role of Indian state during pandemic. You also talked about the response of different kinds of states in different periods of time. Thank you, sir. It is a great pleasure to listen to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With equal pleasure, I take this opportunity to invite the next resource person, another eminent scholar, an outstanding teacher, and a critical thinker of political science, and also an alumni of Government College Autonomous Bhubaneswar, Professor Sarthik Bagh sir, to address the webinar and give his precious inputs to our participants. It is over to Professor Sarthik Bagh sir.
Sir, unmute your speaker, Sarthik Bagh sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thank you, Mahesh, for your kind words. Before I begin my presentation on the topic, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to the first Vice Chancellor of this university, Kaland University, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy. Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy was my teacher, my mentor. I'm so much grateful to him. A lot of inspiration I have taken from him. Also, my gratitude to the patron of this webinar, Bhui Babu. I am very delighted to know my JNU fraternity, the organizing committee of this webinar, Dr. Mahesh, Dr. Sarita, Dr. Sarvesh sir. Great to see you all in this webinar. Okay, my fellow speaker, Professor Narendra Kumar, has already spoken on this topic. I will try to actually restrict to some specific point which I think relevant here to communicate. I have prepared some slides. I have prepared some slides. I would like to present it before you.
नेट बंद हो गया जा দাঁড়া নেট বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে
একটা কথা বলবো
এটা on করো।
বন্ধ তো হ্যাঁ
শিবা আছে না হ্যাঁ
তুই চুপ কর এখন
বলে একবার শোনো ওই মানুষ ওই ছেলেটিকে
যা नेट नहीं आ रहा आपका
Sardik, you can speak, dear.
Well,
Sardik,
yes. But
you can speak. You can refer that and speak, no problem. It will be nice, it will be wonderful.
wait, sir, just 1 minute. Let me try.
But if there is any problem, you can go in that way.
Satvik sir will join.
Nice, it is done. Go ahead.
yes sir it's visible
Sarthik ji, you need to unmute yourself. Unmute, please.
Sarthik sir, please unmute your speaker. Sarthik sir, am I audible? Sir, please
Okay,
unmute your
okay. Hmm. So, am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for. Sorry for some inconvenience. So, actually, the topic of this webinar is role of the state. And so far as the role of the state is concerned, actually, there has been very strong conceptualization about the state, both in ancient time and modern time. In ancient time, it was believed that state continued to exist for the good life of the people. But when it comes to modern time, when that was the time actually the modern nation state emerged in Europe. This is the time the state came to be actually conceptualized as one which tried to secure and preserve the life of the people, more so from anarchy, more so from insecurity and turbulence. I mean, the state is to protect the people. The state is to preserve the people. Otherwise, there will be a situation that will lead to nasty and anarchy in the society. But the way the state was defined and conceptualized in modern state, particularly in Europe, actually it had started changing. The very nature of state had changed significantly in present time, especially with the emergence of new liberalism in 1980s. The states such as welfare state, interventionist state, social democratic state, which actually remained very popular after Second World War, now they are losing their relevance. Now they are losing their relative importance. Because in 1980, America led the new liberal state. In 1980, UK under Margaret Thatcher led the new liberal state. So with this new liberalism, with this new liberal state, actually the very nature of state also started changing. Now we talk about liberal state. Now we have liberal state all around the world. And these liberal state believe that the state should be minimum. It believes in minimal state. It believes in withdrawal of state. State cannot be a state which is meant for cradle to grave, cradle to grave state, or state cannot be now Mai Baap Sarkar. So now the state actually prefer or rely on what we call DLP formula. Deregulation of economy, liberalization of industry, trade and industry, and privatization of state-owned enterprises. And this liberal state, which believes in minimal state, which believes in withdrawal of the state, actually very much averse to spending on social welfare. Rather, it resort to austerity measures and budget cut in the name of efficiency. And so far as India is concerned, we also adopted new liberalism in 1991 when we adopted new economic policy in the country. So 1991 was a transition time for us. It was the first time after 1947 that India actually started a phase with the very concept of rethinking the role of the state. It was an attempt toward the rethinking of the state. Earlier, the state was a project, socialist project, a project to actually fulfill Nehruvian vision. Now, the state, which began since 91, has embraced the new liberalism. it has embraced the neoliberalism. But if you look at the functioning of the neoliberalism over the period of time, we can see some differences. Earlier, Congress led UPA. It was a very centrist party. It supported equity, it supported social welfare, it supported redistributive policy. The approach was very balanced. It did not pursue very aggressive neoliberal agenda, because the philosophy or ideology of Congress was also a progressive secular philosophy, and that helped to strike a balance, not too much neoliberal state. So this was possible during the Congress time. But again, BJP also came to power. BJP, led NDA also came to power, and NDA under Vajpayee actually remained a centrist state. It did not. It was not a center-right state, but it was a centrist state and did not pursue neoliberal agenda aggressively. But in 1947, again, it is a very big transition. It is a big change. So in 1947, when Narendra Modi actually won the election, Lok Sabha election, now the situation is different. So the BJP, the party in power, now pursuing aggressively neoliberal agenda, and in the long run, I believe it will be, it will have negative consequences. So the response to present pandemic, which we think the state has failed to handle, is basically the outcome, or you may say the negative consequences of the neoliberalism or neoliberal state. If you look at the response at the worldwide, we can actually see a definite pattern. How the countries in the world, they have responded to the pandemic, to the COVID pandemic. So there are many studies now. There are many papers which have tried to actually identify the states, the countries which have handled or which have failed to handle pandemic crisis worldwide. Actually, one thing has come up very strongly so far as the response to a pandemic is concerned, is that the state which have some element of paranoid, the state which have some element of paranoid with some degree of democracy, those states or those countries, they have handled the pandemic better than the one which are not that much pandemic. Okay, this is one region. Many countries, they have succeeded in handling response. So in this category, so far as this idea is concerned, South Korea, Taiwan, Israel, they appear to have done very well so far as the response to COVID is concerned, response to pandemic is concerned. The reason these countries, they have done well in handling pandemic is that these countries are paranoid state. Paranoid, it doesn't mean it is not in the sense of medical condition. Paranoid means high degree of anxiety, high degree of threat perception from the immediate rival. So these states, South Korea, Taiwan, Israel, they have hostile neighbor in the region. For example, South Korea has North Korea. North Korea is the rival of South Korea. So South Korea is it remains very anxious. The threat perception is very high. Anytime the missile will hit South Korea. Similarly, the neighbor of Taiwan is China, and anytime China can control Taiwan. Similarly, Israel is very paranoid. Iran can hit Israel anytime, or Hamas can hit Israel anytime. So these threat perception from the hostile neighbor in the region keep them actually busy in the contingency plan. They are always, they are always insecure. They have high anxiety all the time, but they are very alert. They are prepared for any kind of eventuality in case of war or anything. So that has helped this country to control or handle COVID pandemic to a great extent. Apart from that, the countries which have given priority to saving the life of the people, rather than thinking much about the economy, they have also handled the COVID pandemic very well. I mean, they have not actually followed the trade-off. I mean, in trade-off concept, you sacrifice something else. Here, some country, they rather sacrifice the economy, let the economy experience downturn, it doesn't matter, but they have given priority to save people from corona pandemic. So these two things we see world across. Countries who remain paranoid, who remain alert, who are always in the contingency plan, always on standby to face any eventuality, be it military or otherwise any threat. So they have done in responding the pandemic. Now, what is the India's response to the pandemic? How you look at India's response to pandemic? How far India has succeeded in handling the pandemic which began last year? Okay, so the first wave of pandemic in India, I mean, it was proactive. So far as the role of the state is concerned, the first wave of pandemic, India handled better. The response to first wave of pandemic was proactive. India was very much, serious, because lockdown was imposed very early, and there was much more emphasis on quarantine, tracing, testing to a great extent, and relief measures into course announced under centrally sponsored scheme to support the poor. Of course, the biggest failure of the state response during the first wave of pandemic was support to migrant. It was, suddenly the lockdown was imposed, and the migrant, they remained stranded. There was no way out for the migrant. So we had to see the migrant crisis also. So this was one aspect, one failure in the first wave of pandemic in India. Then, so far as the second wave was concerned, actually India lacked pre-preparedness. India did not anticipate that second wave will come. It did not anticipate that there will be resurgence of coronavirus in the second phase. Though there was sufficient scientific advice, there are sufficient scientific input from the expert and scientists that they're more likely that it will hit, the second wave of pandemic will hit India. But I think it was ignored. And in the second phase of pandemic, COVID-19 was not the priority on the part of the government. So because of that, I believe, actually, because of that, it resulted into a disastrous state failure, monumental state failure, by not paying attention to the resurgence of pandemic in the second phase. In the both first and second wave, to me, the notion of welfare of people found to be missing to a great extent. What is important is that in the crisis time, the state has to be very active. I mean, this is a testing time for any state, that in a crisis of this magnitude, the state cannot remain indifferent. Thus, the state has to be very proactive. And welfare agent very important. Relief measures agent very important, which are missing to a great extent, both in first wave and also in the second wave. So, in every extraordinary circumstances, call for extraordinary measures. If the crisis is extraordinary, then you also need extraordinary measures. Actually, that we did not experience in India. It is told that no crisis should go west. People who are familiar with public policy making, they believe this. And it happened in America elsewhere also, that no crisis should go west. Crisis is an opportunity. Crisis is an opportunity to come up with big plan, big policy. And that is how the Marshall Plan in America actually came into being. Marshall Plan, which followed after 1927, after the Great Depression in America, actually they came up with Marshall Plan, and that defined a whole range of things that actually laid down the welfare state in post Second World War, and which continued for a long time. It continued for many decades ahead. So we need that kind of intervention, state intervention, to a large scale, with huge implication, with significance to the life of people. So this did not happen. The state was found to be indifferent. The state was found to be, callous in the second phase, I would say. So what explains the state response to COVID-19 pandemic in India? If that is the situation, the state was not there, the state was missing in action. Actually, what can explain the kind of state response that we experienced both in first and second pandemic? Actually, there are region, the region which I explain in the context of European country, the paranoid state, many countries who remain to be paranoid, they succeeded in handling the COVID pandemic. I think that can also equally, help us to understand why the state failed, or why the state, remained to be indifferent to the crisis in the first place. So, Indian state under Narendra Modi, of course, it is not a paranoid state. India is not a paranoid state, and especially so far as the leader is concerned, Narendra Modi is concerned at the center. So it is paranoid because Narendra Modi is not paranoid. It is because there is no formidable challenge to his position. And there is no strong threat perception exists for Modi. And more so, there is no immediate election. And next election is 3 years away in 1924. So there is the threat perception for Modi is not very high. There is no strong adversary to his position and power. So that one reason we can explain that why Narendra Modi preferred to remain a little indifferent this time while handling pandemic. So this is one reason. Other reason I think is that centralized leadership, power concentrated and centralized in the PMO, and it has many implications. It is inherent with the idea of when we say that centralized leadership is there under the Modi regime, it is inherent with the idea of strong state, which Narendra Ji was talking about. Centralized leadership is very much inherent with the idea of strong state, contrary to soft state, as India was known for earlier. Earlier, India was characterized as soft state. Gunnar Myrdal, long back he characterized India as soft state. India is very lenient towards social deviancy, corruption, crime and so on. So in that sense, the soft state concept was huge. India was not able to take strong step, strong decision. So India remained a soft state for a long time. But now Modi is there and he believes centralized state. That is, he believes in the strong state. Okay. So this strong state also related with aversion for what we call too much democracy. BJP and RSS actually they believe that now there is too much democracy in the country. People are speaking, people are protesting, people are raising their voice. So this is too much democracy. So central leadership means that he wants to curtail too much democracy in the country. So it means two implications. I mean, when you say that too much democracy, I mean it means in procedural affair, the centralized leadership want to bypass the different channel of decision-making process. The decision-making process, there should not be any obstacle to fast and effective decision-making process. So the different channels which a decision actually pass through not to be there. That is why that in just single day or in just 2 days of time, government would pass 14, 15 bill together without deliberation, without referring it to the parliamentary committee and so on. So it reflects that we need not to follow too much democracy in the form of procedural requirement. So no need of different channels, of decision-making process in the country. So it also meant curtailing too much democracy, which is inherent in the very idea of centralized leadership, is also related with the freedom that we enjoy in civil society, in the political sphere. The centralized state now want to curtail public criticism. The centralized leadership want to, restrict freedom of speech, right to dissent, right to protest. Okay, so the centralized leadership want to have some degree of impunity. I mean, it want to have a privilege that his regime should not witness too much democracy. And that way he want to, manifest, that way he want to present that to the people. So other actually factors which played very critical role in the response to COVID pandemic is that new liberal orthodoxy. New liberal orthodoxy believes in or averse to welfare spending. I mean, the relief measures announced by the government in that sense doesn't even account for 1% of GDP. New liberal orthodoxy, it doesn't encourage spending on welfare, and that is the reason that the relief that India announced during the pandemic doesn't even account for 1% of GDP total. There was a hue and cry from the opposition, from the media, that during the crisis period, at least we can actually go for some income support. We can go for some cash transfer for the poor, for the migrant worker. But it did not happen. And it did not happen because of the strong belief in new liberal orthodoxy. The government would not like to spend more and more on welfare, even if the time is a crisis time. So again, at the regional level, this is what we see at the central level, what we see about Narendra Modi as Prime Minister at the national level. Now we can see how the different state in the country, they have actually responded to pandemic, both wave, first wave and second wave. Okay, so I would like to explain that same the paranoid state. Here I mean when the state had the presence of very strong opponent or adversary, that state is more likely to perform more than the state which are not paranoid. The state where there is very strong political rival, for example, Delhi has strong political rival. So Kejriwal cannot take it lightly. Maharashtra has strong political rival. So Maharashtra cannot take it lightly so far as handling of pandemic is concerned. Similarly, Kerala is also, in Kerala also there is strong presence of opponent, strong presence of political rival, opposition. So Kerala also cannot take lightly so far as handling of the pandemic is concerned. So the state where there is anxiety, where there is higher level of threat perception from the opposition, that state seems doing better in handling the pandemic situation. So Gujarat is not a paranoid state. I would like to reflect upon the working of Gujarat during pandemic. Gujarat is not a pandemic state like Maharashtra, Delhi or Kerala. I mean, in Gujarat, there is no formidable challenge. There is no formidable political rival. The opposition is very weak. So there is no popular pressure to perform. And social sector is very much neglected. Gujarat is a unique case to cite here because that is the state which actually manifest a new liberal state. For the last 20 years, Gujarat state is a new liberal state. And what is there? During pandemic, the health structure collapsed, the health structure crumbled. People line up for hospital bed, people line up for oxygen and so on. Because for the last 20 years, the state has not invested heavily in hospital, in public health. So that is a manifestation of how a new liberal state looks like in the state Gujarat. And this is Gujarat model which Modi wanted to actually adopt at the national level. He wants to make India a Gujarat model, And Gujarat model, so far as the pandemic is concerned, is a failure model. It is a failed model. It is a failed model and one of the severe, worst affected state in the country. So the state where leaders face strong opposition, the state where the ruling party has strong adversary, they are doing well. They are responding to the pandemic better than the state where the opposition is weak or where the leader think that they will manage. There will not be any threat to their power. So Odisha, I think it is not a paranoid state, but also there is no formidable threat from political opponent. But Odisha is actually committed to some degree of welfareism, not to extent of Kerala, but it is committed to some degree of welfareism. In the first wave, it did well. In the first wave, it did well, and in the second wave, I think there was little complacency. There is little, complacency, because to me, this is there because this time there is no central leadership. There is no national lockdown. So that is one reason I believe that Odisha in the second phase is not that pro compared to the first wave. But Odisha has experience of handling calamity, experience of handling natural disaster. So that has given some experience to handle pandemic, corona pandemic. So the way forward, I think, is that as my previous speaker has already spoken, that yes, we need to rethink the role of the state. We need to rethink the role of the state. The new liberal state, not only in India, but in Western world, they have actually generated huge inequality, disparity, and poverty. And in our country, our basic problem is poverty. We are still struggling to have our basic problem solved. When this is the situation, why we need to pursue so aggressively to the new liberal agenda, to new liberalism. So we must rethink about the role of state, because role of state is more important in addressing welfare of the people. So we must bring back the state. We must bring back the state, a kind of state paying more attention, more serious attention to basic issues of people: income, health, education, housing, and so. We need to actually invent a state, a social welfare state, or a social democracy found in Kerala. So this is there are areas, there are concern to rethinking. We are compelled to, I think, rethink about the role of state, because the present state is more corporate oriented. It is trying to serve more to the corporate, the 1% of the people in the country. So vast majority is there, and they are looking forward to the state for the support, for the relief in such a time of pandemic. So with this word, I wind up my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Bagh, for your outstanding deliberation. Really, your deliberation is appropriate at this juncture. You have touched on so many critical areas. You have focused on neoliberal nature of state. You have focused on inadequacy of welfare measures for the marginalized and laborers. You also focused on the failure of state to produce a desired effect. There are so many things you have talked about, and we'll listen to you in future, and we'll consider it as an alumni. For the time being, thank you. Now it is time for interaction of participants with our research persons. There are so many questions, but we will take up very few of them. And I request our research persons to respond to our participants' questions. First question. It is a question from Professor Himangshu Charan Sarangi to Professor Narendra Kumar sir. State is a hypothetical construct assigned with some characteristics. In this context, is the concept role of state appropriate, or should it be role of the group who govern the government? Professor Kumar.
Do you want me to respond individually
yes,
to
sir.
all the questions? Okay, fine. So you are saying the first question is
Yes, sir.
from, yeah, just a minute. Yeah. Is this context, in this context, is the concept role of state appropriate, or should it be role of the group who govern? Yeah, actually, see, what I was trying to argue is that though the state remains the same, where sometimes when it is a liberal state behaves differently with different personalities. And obviously, those personalities are backed by a kind of group. And if they are, or the person is backed by a group, then certainly there is a uh, uh, kind of influence of that also on the larger functioning of the state. And that's why we say that this is the kind of role of the state. So role of the state certainly uh, differs with the kind of personalities, with the kind of ideologies. And uh, but why we cannot say it a role of the group who govern, because we need to look at the larger state. And when we look at the largely at the state, then uh, there is only not only that group, but also there are few institutions. There is a, let's say, constitution, which is also a kind of which sometimes might give power to that group, and which sometimes might take away that power from that group. But largely what happens is, my argument was that it is basically the personality and the ideology and the context in which a person functions that determines the nature of the state or the role of the state.
Thank you, Professor Kumar. There is another question from Professor Shimantala Misra. Question is that in a secular state,
Mysore,
sir,
you can club up 3-4 questions and ask.
yes, sir,
so
sir.
that we
Only
there
two
will be
questions, sir.
speed.
Yes, sir. This is another question from Professor Shimantala Misra. In a secular state, is it worthwhile to go for Kumbh Mela and spread the second wave of the pandemic? Second is it proper on the part of the state to go for election and the rally?
Yeah,
Professor Kumar.
yeah. Dr. Mishra, actually, we have been discussing some of these issues, and certainly when the state is a secular state, and when it proclaims to be a secular state, certainly there is no space for specific considerations for any kind of group. But the issue is that the government or the regime in power does not consider secularism as its objective or as its philosophy. When the secularism itself is contested by the regime in power, then certainly it will be favoring few and maybe, let's say, disfavoring against few others. So that's so the otherwise, constitutionally we are a secular state wherein the Kumbh Mela or any kind of these let's say religious congregations should have been avoided, and that certainly has impacted particularly the North Indian states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. And you might have heard about the issues which have come up during this pandemic in from these two states in particular. And actually, I was just trying to understand that when Professor Sarthik Bag was talking about that there is when there is a strong opposition, actually, when we look at the Bihar, in Bihar, there is certainly a kind of strong opposition, but the government actually is not responding well there. So there is a spread of conflict. Actually, there is a complex issue. Even if there is a though largely one can say that where there are strong oppositions, there the state governments have been responding well. But this is a kind of let's say this is not rule, but this is also this can also be considered as one different issue. Second is that is it proper on the part of the state to go for election and the rally? Actually, See,
Thank you.
this part. You don't want me to address this part?
Yes, yes, sir. Please
Okay,
continue.
okay. Election Commission is a constitutional body, and Election Commission actually, when it is not working as an autonomous body, as a constitutional body, and it is influenced by the regime in power, then certainly there are issues, and these issues are now being raised because uh, the election commission is not functioning autonomously. And you know that when we did not have these electronic voting machines, and we did not have this kind of infrastructure, even though during those times we used to have 1 day election at the national level, not only for the parliament but also for the state assemblies simultaneously. And that's what we have done in this country. But now things are in a different form.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Actually, we are running short of time. We'll take up only
Okay,
one question.
okay, fine.
This question is to Professor Sarthik Bag. Hope you will respond. And this question is from Professor Baidyanath Padi. Professor Bag, how rethinking to be started at remote corners of the countryside to check the pandemic situation? Professor Bag.
Uh, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, sir. How rethinking to be started at remote corners of countryside to check the pandemic situation?
Okay. Uh, good question. Uh, so actually, response, when I say that we should rethink the state, rethink the role of the state, I meant to also, include that the governance process should be decentralized. The governance process should be democratized. That way also I look at the role of the state. So far as the rethinking is concerned, So there are many issues. It is not a straightforward answer to this question. There are many issues involved in it. So we need to strengthen the local level institution, decentralized structure, governance structure, and not only with that, we must equip them with resources, equip them with leadership, so that they will be in a position to respond the crisis situation more effectively. So it has to be a not only a top-down model. Top-down model has failed. We should actually bottom-up approach should be given the priority. So I would rather endorse this idea that it is a state, people-oriented state, concern for welfare, concern for their protection, concern for their relief in such crisis, and there should be a considerable devolution of power at the grassroots with financial power, with financial resources. This is what I would like to respond.
Thank you, Professor Bag. Thank you, Professor Bag and Professor Narendra Kumar, for your response. And thank you, all participants. Actually, we are running short of time, so we are unable to take up many questions. Next time, we'll try to have another webinar on different topic and we can do it. So it is time now for presidential address. May I have the honor to invite our chief patron, the man of distinct vision, a fountainhead of illuminating ideas, an idol of knowledge and experience, and inspiration to all of us. He is none other than the first Vice Chancellor of Kalahandi University, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy sir, to give his presidential address. It is over to you, Honorable Vice Chancellor sir.
Thank you, Moisar. I am proud of my team of political science who could arrange such a nice seminar. I heard about Professor Narendra Kumar long back, but couldn't meet him at JNU. For last 5-6 years, beforehand I was going, but for last 5-6 years, there was a meeting of Kalinga Sikhya Samaj, headed by B.C. Tripathi in JNU campus. And I'm a permanent invitee to conduct that in JNU campus. And I'm so packed, so I couldn't meet others, even my students, which was doing long back. And listening to Sarthik was a great experience. I have heard the boy in Government College Bhawanipatna speaking for the first time before an audience. And now he is speaking to the country. It was a proud moment to listen to him. I feel nostalgic. I am remembering many students at that time, his friends in particular, who are spread over in different parts of the country and outside. It's a great pleasure. And I also, let me talk to all the people. So many questions have come that speaks the deliberations, both the deliberations were very rich. That's why so much questions are coming to their mind. And Mysore, Sarita, you can collect all those questions, and if possible, we can see what can be done over that. Okay, so I will just speak a little on this. There is no end to the paradigm social change with time. It took nearly 30 to 40,000 years to change over from Stone Age to evolve agricultural first wave society. It took over 3 to 10,000 years to change over from first wave to second wave industrial society. The second wave society was characterized by factory smokestacks industrial revolution based on imperialism, development of bureaucratic management, Newtonian sciences and engineering. It took only few hundred years to change over from second to third wave information technological society based on feedback and feed-forward system with computer-centric super technology. And we are now in the fourth age. The point of hinting this is the evolutional path of tackling things by the state. Here the technology is a vital factor. And simultaneously with the technology, what is important, skilled personnel to handle that technology. Technology which is there, is it so much different in different countries? So there is a similarity, but there is a human factor behind which needs to be controlled, because we are looking to the society, looking to the collectivity, not the individual. Sarthak must be remembering, I had told them at that time about a book 1984. George Orwell, everybody is equal, but some are more equal. That persists in many parts, in many interventions, but now the things are happening in such a manner, we are running in such a state of affairs, we need to conglomerate our awareness, conglomerate our attempts to save the society. So the individual and the state, they have to be in a parity. With one example, I'll end up. Today morning, I got a phone call. The phone call was in a village. Every day since last 10 days, somebody or other is dying, and nobody is entering to the house for the cremation of that person. And it is in a very bad state of affairs. Who will do it? And Professor Kumar, you will be glad to know, my volunteers, my ex-volunteers of YRC and NSS, and the patronage of the officials that is there, with the help, they are taking all the dead bodies and taking up the cremation purposes. So it is the conglomeration of the people and the state, the collaboration of both the parties, so that we can fight against the worst situations. It may be now. I was 8 minutes late, Professor Kumar. I am not much worried for Sarthik because he knows it. My sir will definitely come. There must be some problem. Otherwise, he will be in time. I tried from 2.58, 2 minutes before 3. It was raining heavily outside and I couldn't get the line. So for those things, there are threats, so we cannot do anything. From tonight, towards tomorrow, maybe 24 hours will be very heavy. And coincidentally, I have not kept any webinar tomorrow. So it will not be a problem. But I felt it today. So in certain cases, it is not only 2, but 3 things which are to be integrated. The individual, the state, and over and above, which you can say God, which you can say time, the heaven. If these 3 things, they are not in conglomeration, then we cannot proceed with the velocity which we require. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all the listeners. Thank you the listeners who have put questions in particular. And I think those who have the questions, 2 things are there. They have the answer. Second thing is they have the curiosity to know, and we will try to quench it up. Again, I thank Professor Kumar. Maybe we will be meeting sometime. Physically, we will be having you to see your students what they are doing here at Kalahandi with a new university. And Sarthik, I am very happy. I have tried twice to go to you, but the situations didn't permit, some or other things. But I'll be very happy. We will be in touch. Maybe less physically, but mentally we are together. I am with you always. Thank you. Thank you, my sir. You can carry on.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for all your enlightening and insightful words. We are really enthralled by your speech, and I hope that your speech will definitely make a lasting impression on all our participants. And now we are at the end part of our webinar, and it is time for giving a vote of thanks. And for this purpose, I would like to request my colleague, Madam Charita Bang, to propose a vote of thanks. Madam Charita, it is over to you.
Thank you, sir. I am audible, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Today's webinar has been one of the most thought-provoking and stimulating indeed. Due to set of time, most questions remain unanswered, but definitely we'll try to answer those questions because I have taken all screenshots. Thank you all participants. At the outset, my immense gratitude from core of my heart goes to Professor Narendra Kumar sir, to whom I shall remain indebted, obliged and thankful forever for sharing his unique approach, insights, practical knowledge and intellect with us today. Sir, your constructive arguments, ideas were really thought-provoking and enlightening. Sir, your presence means a lot for us. Words are not enough to express my feelings. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time out of your busy schedule and being agreed to accept our invitation. Sir, I am really so happy. After a long time, I got a chance to listen you. A sincere thanks to you, sir, on behalf of PG Department of Political Science, Kalahandi University. Also, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Satik Bag, sir, to whom, to whom always we shall remain indebted for sharing his wisdom, constructive ideas, and unique approach with us today. Your constructive arguments, ideas are really beneficial for us in the long run. Sir, being the alumni of this institution, you are really a great inspiration for all of us, and we are fortunate enough to have you with us on the dais today. Sir, thank you so much for being agreed and gracing the occasion with your gracious presence. Once again, a sincere thanks to you, sir, on behalf of PG Department of Kalahandi University. I express my deep sense of gratitude and appreciation to our chief patron, Honorable VC of Kalahandi University, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy, sir, who has been the driving force behind this and without whose effort and inspiration, today we would not have been able to accomplish this vision. Series of webinars has already been organized by various departments of Kalahandi University and to be held by other departments in coming days. It's only possible because of Professor Satpathy, sir. It's true that we have always aspired for such kind of academic engagement, but it's you, sir, who inspired us, awakened the curious child within us, our hidden potential and capabilities. Sir, on your arrival, this newborn Kalahandi University Bhavani Patna has got a unique identity and recognition. It's my strong belief that in coming days, it's going to be the hub of the intellectual engagement, a space for generating original idea. Once again, a sincere thanks to you, sir, on behalf of PG Department of Political Science. Thank you, sir. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Padmalochan Bhoi, sir, our esteemed Registrar of Kalahandi University, for his inaugural address, for being the means of constant support, guidance, encouragement to conduct such kind of programs. Thank you so much, sir, for your blessings and good wishes. I extend my thanks to Professor Maheshwar Durya, sir, Professor of Political Science, for his motivating ideas, suggestion, guidance, advice, and tireless effort to make this webinar happening. A big thanks to you, sir, for moderating this session and making it successful. Also, I think thanks Sri Sarveshwar Uthan Singh, sir, lecturer in political science, to being the organizing team and for his support and suggestion to organize this webinar. Thank you, sir. I also extend my hearty vote of thanks to all faculties members of Kalahandi University, my colleagues, all HOD, my ex-colleagues from DAB College Chitlagarh, the participants across the country from JNU, Central University of Kerala, Central University of Haryana, and many more for their sincere participation, opinions, arguments, feedback to make this program successful. Last but not least, a big thanks to Sri Vishnu Chaudhary, technical assistants of Kalahandi University, for his effort and patience to creating a Google Meet platform which accommodated 250 participants. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Once again.
Thank you, dear. Thanks to all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Master
Thank you.
Sarita, make the report ready. And
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
I am thanking again Professor Kumar, but it should go in writing
Yeah.
from my university to here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
So
you, sir.
happy to be
Thank
here.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.